The council chamber was enormous, stretching nearly half a kilometer in every direction. Ambassador Lisa Grant sat in the human delegation section, watching as representatives from 247 species filed into their assigned positions. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the various atmospheric requirements, creating subtle currents that made the holographic displays shimmer. Lisa had been Earth's chief representative for 6 years now. She had seen these chambers filled with celebration when the Keltheran drought was solved. She had witnessed solemn moments when entire species were mourned after natural disasters, but she had never seen the chamber feel quite like this. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Captain Jake Morrison stood behind her, his military uniform crisp and proper. He commanded the Horizon's Edge, the diplomatic vessel that had brought them here. His hand rested near his comm device, ready to relay any orders back to the ship. Next to him, Dr. Peter Hayes adjusted his glasses nervously, the xenobiologist already knowing what was coming. The session began with the traditional greetings, each species representative offering their formal acknowledgments. It took nearly 30 minutes just to get through the protocols. Then Counselor Vexthar rose from his elevated platform. The Draxian was imposing, nearly 3 meters tall with scales that shifted between deep green and bronze. His eyes, cold and reptilian, fixed on the human section. "We gathered today to address a matter of grave concern," Vexthar began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. "For 43 years, humanity has been part of this council. We welcomed them with open arms, despite their youth and inexperience. We shared our knowledge, our technology, our wisdom accumulated over millennia." Lisa kept her expression neutral. She had heard variations of this speech before in private sessions. "Yet humanity has repeatedly shown disregard for council authority," Vexthar continued. "They establish colonies in disputed territories without approval. They offer sanctuary to refugee species without consulting the proper committees. They make unilateral decisions that affect the entire galactic community." One by one, other counselors rose to speak. A floating ethereal representative spoke of human aggressive expansion. A crystalline lithoid complained about human mining operations near their sacred sites. An avian skyborn delegate accused humans of technological hoarding because humanity had declined to share certain military research. The speeches went on for 3 hours. Peter leaned forward and whispered to Lisa, "They've been planning this for months." "This is coordinated," Lisa nodded slightly. She had suspected as much. The council's majority faction had grown increasingly uncomfortable with humanity's independence. Humans didn't follow the traditional pathways of younger species. They didn't defer to elder races or wait centuries for permission to act. They saw opportunities and took them. They saw problems and solved them. It made the established powers nervous. Finally, Vexithar delivered the ultimatum. "The council has deliberated extensively on this matter. Humanity must choose. You will cease all independent colonial expansion immediately. The 12 colonies you have established in contested regions will be placed under direct council oversight. Your military forces will accept permanent restrictions, limiting your fleet size to no more than 200 vessels, and you will submit all future diplomatic initiatives to council approval before implementation." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "These terms are non-negotiable. You have contributed to our community, this is true. But you must learn your place within the galactic order. Humanity is but one species among hundreds. Your voice cannot carry equal weight to those civilizations that have maintained peace and prosperity for 10,000 years or more." The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the human delegation. Lisa could feel the expectation in the air. They wanted her to argue, to plead, to negotiate. That was how these things usually went. Younger species would protest, make passionate speeches about their rights and contributions, and eventually accept a slightly modified version of whatever the council demanded. Lisa stood slowly, smoothing her jacket. She walked to the central speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. When she reached the podium, she looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of as many delegates as she could. "I've listened carefully to everything said today," Lisa began, her voice calm and clear. "I've heard the concerns, the accusations, the demands. I want to thank this council for the 43 years of association we've shared. Humanity learned much from you. We grew as a species through our interactions with your civilizations." She paused, letting her words sink in. Several counselors relaxed slightly, thinking she was about to concede. "But I must respectfully inform this council that humanity rejects these terms entirely. The chamber erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Vexthar's scales flushed a deep red, a sign of anger in his species. Lisa waited for the noise to subside. When she spoke again, her voice cut through the chaos with surprising force. We came to you in friendship. We contributed our technology freely. We sent our doctors to staff your medical stations. We built communication networks that connected your worlds. We mediated your disputes and asked nothing in return except to be treated as equals. But you don't see us as equals, she continued. You see us as children who need to be controlled. You see our independence as arrogance. You see our success as a threat. The terms you've presented aren't about maintaining galactic order. They're about putting humanity in chains because we dare to think for ourselves. Vexthar tried to interrupt, but Lisa pressed on. Every contribution we've made was given freely. But freedom is a two-way street. You cannot demand our gifts while denying us our autonomy. You cannot enjoy the benefits of partnership while treating us as subjects. She straightened her shoulders and delivered her final statement. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council. We will remove all our personnel from Council facilities. We will deactivate our shared infrastructure systems. We will cease all joint operations and collaborative projects. We wish you well, but we will not be ruled. The silence that followed was absolute. For nearly a minute, no one moved or spoke. Then Vexthar found his voice, though it sounded strained. You cannot be serious. You need the Council. Your economy depends on galactic trade networks. Your colonies rely on our support. Your technology, advanced as it may be, is still generations behind the eldest races. You will come crawling back within a year, begging for readmission. Lisa smiled sadly. Perhaps. But that will be our choice to make. Goodbye, Counselor. She turned and walked back to the human section. Jake and Peter fell in beside her as they left the chamber. Behind them, the council dissolved into chaos as delegates shouted questions and accusations at each other. When they reached the horizon's edge, Jake immediately went to the bridge to coordinate with the other human vessels in orbit. There were 17 ships in total, ranging from diplomatic transports to cargo haulers. All of them received the same order: begin immediate departure procedures. Lisa went to her private quarters and opened a secure channel to Earth. President Claire Bennett appeared on the screen, her expression grave but determined. It's done, Lisa said simply. Claire nodded. How did they take it? About as expected. Vexthar thinks we're bluffing. Most of them seem to believe we'll be back in months, desperate and willing to accept any terms. Let them think that, Claire replied. Commence Operation Silent Departure. All human personnel in council space are to evacuate within 72 hours. Be polite, be efficient, and don't look back. Over the next 3 days, humanity executed the most organized withdrawal in galactic history. Medical personnel packed up equipment and deleted research files from shared databases. Engineers deactivated quantum relay stations that had connected council worlds. Merchants loaded their cargo holds and filed final trade documents. Diplomats closed embassies and shredded sensitive materials. The aliens watched in confusion and growing concern. Many tried to convince their human colleagues to stay. Some offered personal appeals, speaking of friendships and shared experiences. But the humans were polite and firm. They had their orders. Lisa stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge as the ship prepared for its final departure from Axis Prime. Through the view screen, she could see the massive station growing smaller as they pulled away. Other human vessels formed up around them, creating a neat formation. All ships report ready for jump, Jake announced from the captain's chair. Then let's go home, Lisa said softly. The ships activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished from council space in flashes of brilliant light. Behind them, on Axis Prime, Counselor Mirshala watched from an observation deck. The aquatic Keltharan pressed one webbed hand against the transparent aluminum, her internal gills fluttering with anxiety. They actually left, she whispered to herself. Beside her, another counselor laughed dismissively. Good riddance. We're better off without their chaos and arrogance. But Mirshala continued staring at the empty space where the human ships had been. Something told her they had just made a terrible mistake. 6 months passed since humanity's departure from the Galactic Council. In that time, the initial shock had faded, replaced by smug satisfaction among the Council's leadership. Vexthar gave speeches about how the galactic community was stronger without human interference. Trade continued. Life went on. Or so it seemed. Dr. Helen Carter was one of the last humans to leave Council Space. She had spent 15 years working at the Keltheran Medical Institute, a prestigious facility that treated patients from dozens of species. Her specialty was cross-species immunology, developing treatments that worked across different biological systems. When the withdrawal order came, she had requested an extension to finish training her replacement. On her final day, she stood in the main laboratory, watching her Keltheran colleague Shenvara struggle with a diagnostic machine. The device kept giving error codes that made no sense. "I don't understand," Shenvara said, her tentacles writhing in frustration. "The machine worked perfectly yesterday. Now it won't calibrate properly." Helen sighed. "That's because I deactivated the human firmware last night. The base Keltheran software doesn't know how to handle hybrid genetic sequences. You'll need to manually input the parameters for each non-Keltheran patient. But that will take hours per patient instead of minutes," Shenvara protested. "I know," Helen said gently. "I'm sorry. I tried to leave detailed instructions, but this system was built on human medical AI. Without access to our databases, it's going to be much more difficult." Similar scenes played out across Council Space. Human personnel explained what would stop working once they left. Most aliens didn't believe them or didn't understand the implications. After all, the technology still physically existed. The machines were still there. How hard could it be? Very hard, as it turned out. Colonel Ryan Blake sat in the command center of Earth's Outer Defense Network, monitoring long-range sensors. His job was to watch the border between human and Council Space, ensuring no threats approached Earth's territory. For months now, he had been watching something else: the systematic collapse of Council infrastructure. "Sir, we're picking up another distress call from the Thexlar system," his communications officer reported. Ryan pulled up the data. The Thexlar had a major trade hub that processed goods for 30 nearby systems. The hub had relied heavily on human quantum computing systems to manage the logistics. When humans withdrew, they took their quantum cores with them. The Thexlar tried to replace them with conventional computing, but the processing power wasn't sufficient. Now the hub was experiencing massive delays and routing errors. "How many is that this week?" Ryan asked. 17 major facility disruptions, sir. And that's just what we can detect from here. The actual number is probably much higher." Ryan nodded slowly. Before the withdrawal, a team of human specialists had spent 2 years mapping every piece of human integrated technology in Council Space. The report had been classified and shared only with top Earth government officials. It showed that humanity had become deeply woven into the fabric of galactic civilization, far more than anyone realized. The quantum communication network was the most obvious example. Humans had built it over 30 years, establishing relay stations that used Earth's unique understanding of quantum entanglement. The technology worked differently from the Council's traditional faster-than-light communication, being both faster and more reliable. Within months of the human withdrawal, half the network went dark as unmaintained stations failed or were deliberately deactivated by departing human engineers. But that was just the beginning. Merchant Captain Nina Brooks guided her ship, the Wanderer, through the neutral station known as Crossroads. The station sat on the border between Council Space and the independent territories, making it a popular meeting point for traders who operated outside official channels. Nina had been running cargo between human and alien worlds for 20 years. She knew the trade routes better than anyone. After the withdrawal, she had a choice to make: continue serving Council customers or focus on human interests. She chose humanity. Now she was here to pick up a special cargo: medical supplies being sent to human colonies. As she supervised the loading, a Centaurian merchant approached her. She recognized him as Kelvar, someone she had done business with for years. "Nina, please, I need to speak with you," Kelvar said, his forearms gesturing urgently. She turned to face him. "Hello, Kelvar. Good to see you. But I'm on a tight schedule. I understand, but please, just a moment." The Centaurian's face showed genuine distress. "The trade route between my system and the lithoid worlds has collapsed. Human ships used to carry 70% of the goods on that route. Now there's no one to transport the cargo. My business is dying." Nina felt sympathy for him, but she kept her expression neutral. "There are plenty of non-human transport companies. Hire one of them. I tried, Kelvar said desperately. They want triple the rates you charged, and their delivery times are twice as long. Plus, they don't have the refrigeration technology for biological cargo. Half my goods arrive spoiled. That's not my problem anymore, Nina said firmly but not unkindly. Your council made it clear that humans weren't welcome as equals. We left. Find your own solutions. She walked back to her ship, leaving Kelvar standing on the dock looking lost. As the Wanderer undocked, Nina felt a pang of guilt, but she pushed it aside. The council had made their choice. Now they could live with the consequences. On the council world of Kelthar, the situation was becoming critical. Councillor Mirshala reviewed the agricultural reports with growing alarm. 3 years ago, human scientists had helped develop drought-resistant crops that saved the Keltharan people from potential famine. The crops were genetic hybrids that required specific care and monitoring. The human agricultural advisors were gone now. The Keltharan farmers tried to maintain the crops using traditional methods, but the yields were dropping rapidly. Some fields were showing signs of genetic instability, the plants reverting to older, less productive forms. Mirshala had tried to raise the issue in council sessions, but Vexthar dismissed her concerns. The Keltharans became too dependent on human help, he said. This is a temporary adjustment period. You'll adapt, but Mirshala knew better. Her people were facing another famine, and this time there were no humans to help solve it. In the Draxian system, Councillor Zephyrim of the Thexler species was compiling a comprehensive report on the human withdrawal's impact. Zephyrim was a bureaucrat by nature, someone who loved data and facts. What the data showed terrified him. Human medical personnel had staffed 43% of major medical facilities in council space. Human engineers had designed or maintained 37% of the council's power generation systems. Human merchants handled 31% of interspecies trade. Human diplomats had mediated 68% of minor disputes between council species in the past decade. But the numbers didn't tell the whole story. Humans hadn't just participated in these systems. They had often been the glue holding them together. They had the unusual ability to understand and work with dozens of different species simultaneously. They were innovative problem solvers who could adapt quickly to unexpected situations. They were willing to work in dangerous or undesirable locations that other species avoided. Zephyrim presented his report to the council leadership. He showed them charts and graphs demonstrating the cascading failures happening across council space. He explained that the problems would only get worse as more systems degraded without proper maintenance. Vexthar looked at the report for less than 5 minutes before pushing it aside. You're being alarmist, the Draxian said dismissively. Yes, there are some temporary inconveniences, but the council has survived for 10,000 years. We will adapt and overcome. We don't need humanity. With respect, Counselor, the data suggest otherwise, Zephyrim argued carefully. The data is incomplete, Vexthar snapped. You're only seeing the problems, not the solutions we're already implementing. This discussion is over. Zephyrim left the meeting feeling frustrated and worried. The council leadership was in denial, refusing to acknowledge the scope of their mistake. Meanwhile, in human space, a very different story was unfolding. The withdrawal had been carefully planned for years. Humanity hadn't just walked away from the council. They had prepared for independence. President Claire Bennett stood in the newly completed space station called New Horizon. The massive structure had been under construction for 5 years, built in secret in the outer regions of human territory. It was larger than anything the council had ever built, a testament to human engineering and determination. How many species have contacted us so far? Claire asked her chief of staff. 47 official inquiries, Madam President. Another 112 unofficial feelers through various channels. Most of them want to establish trade agreements outside the council framework. Some are asking about technology transfers. A few are hinting at leaving the council themselves. Claire nodded. This was expected. Humanity's withdrawal had created a power vacuum, and smaller species were realizing they had options beyond the council's authority. What's our response? We're being selective. Priority goes to species that treated us well during. 1 year had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and the situation had deteriorated far beyond anyone's predictions. What the council leadership dismissed as temporary inconvenience had become a full-blown crisis. The galactic economy was in recession. Trade networks that had functioned smoothly for centuries were breaking down. Minor species were openly questioning the Council's authority. And humanity remained conspicuously silent, hidden behind their borders like a mystery waiting to be solved. Councillor Vexthar stood before the Council Assembly, trying to maintain his composure as dozens of angry delegates shouted questions at him. The Draxian scales had lost some of their luster, and his eyes showed the strain of constant crisis management. "Order," he called out, his voice amplified but lacking its former authority. "I understand your concerns, but we must remain united." "United?" shrieked a skyborn delegate, her feathers ruffled in agitation. "3 species have left the Council in the past month alone. They're negotiating directly with humanity now. How is that unity? The Keltharan worlds are starving," added another voice from the crowd. "Where is our humanitarian response?" "We're working on solutions," Vexthar insisted. "We've sent agricultural specialists to Kelthar. The situation will improve. Your specialists can't replicate what the humans did," Councillor Mirshala said quietly from her seat. The Keltharan's voice was weak, her body showing signs of malnutrition. She had been refusing extra rations, insisting that she share her people's suffering. "My people are dying, Vexthar. Children are dying, and we're too proud to ask for help." The chamber fell silent at that. Everyone knew the Keltharan situation was dire, but hearing it stated so bluntly was sobering. Vexthar tried to respond, but he was interrupted by an urgent message from Council security. His face went pale as he read it. "The Council is adjourned," he announced abruptly. "Emergency session in 1 hour." The delegates filed out, confused and worried. Mirshala remained in her seat, too tired to move. She knew what the emergency was. The military inspection fleet had returned from human space. Or rather, what was left of it had returned. 3 weeks earlier, Vexthar had convinced the Council to send a military fleet to human territory. The official purpose was to ensure compliance with galactic norms and verify that humanity wasn't developing dangerous technologies. The real purpose was to intimidate humans and remind them of the Council's power. The fleet consisted of 47 vessels, a substantial force by Council standards. Admiral Korvash of the Centaurian fleet led the expedition. He was an experienced commander, someone who had fought in the border wars 30 years ago. He didn't expect trouble. After all, Council intelligence suggested that humanity had fewer than 200 ships, and their technology was considered inferior to elder races. The intelligence was catastrophically wrong. Admiral Korvash sat in the debriefing room, his forearms trembling slightly as he recounted what happened. General Marcus Stone had arranged for the Council to see this debriefing, transmitting it directly from human space as a gesture of transparency. "It was damning. We approached the human border at the designated coordinates," Korvash began, his voice hollow. "Our sensors detected nothing at first. No ships, no stations, no sign of defense infrastructure. I thought perhaps the humans had withdrawn deeper into their territory." He paused, taking a drink of water. Then our lead vessel, the Eternal Light, simply stopped. All systems functional, but the ship couldn't move. It was as if something was holding it in place. Before we could react, 6 more ships experienced the same problem. "What kind of weapon was it?" Vexthar demanded. "We don't know," Korvash admitted. "Our sensors couldn't detect anything. No energy signatures, no projectiles, no visible technology. The ships just froze in space." Then a human voice came over the communication channel. The Admiral pulled up a recording. A calm female voice filled the room. "Attention, Council Fleet. You are attempting to enter sovereign human territory without authorization. Your vessels have been disabled by our defense grid. You are not in danger. Please state your intentions." Korvash continued his report. "I explained that we were on an official Council inspection mission. The human response was immediate. She said that the Council had no authority in human space and that uninvited military forces would be turned back. I tried to argue, to assert our right to ensure galactic security. She was polite but absolutely firm. Then she offered to show us why we should leave." The Admiral pulled up sensor data from what happened next. His hands shook as he did so. 73 human vessels appeared on our sensors. They weren't there before. They just materialized around us like they had been invisible until that moment. Our tactical officers analyzed them immediately. The readings made no sense. He highlighted several data points. Their power signatures were 3 times higher than our most advanced ships. Their shield configurations used principles our scientists don't understand, and they were equipped with weapon systems that—" He trailed off. "Explain," Vexthar ordered. "They demonstrated one weapon for us," Korvash said quietly. "They targeted an asteroid 2 kilometers wide, about 10 million kilometers from our position. A single shot from one of their ships cut the asteroid into perfect pieces. The precision was absolute. The power required for such a feat is beyond our capabilities." The room was silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't just kept their military research secret. They had leapfrogged ahead of Council technology by generations. "The human commander told us that they had no desire for conflict," Korvash continued. "But she made it very clear that human space was off limits to unauthorized vessels. Then she released our ships and escorted us to the border. Her exact words were, 'Tell your council that humanity wishes them well, but we will not tolerate interference. Go in peace.' Not a single shot was fired at us," the admiral concluded. "They could have destroyed our entire fleet in seconds. Instead, they showed us their strength and sent us home. It was the most humiliating moment of my military career." After the debriefing ended, Vexthar sat in his private chambers, staring at the data. Everything had gone wrong. The assumptions about human weakness were false. The belief that they needed the council was mistaken. The certainty that they would return begging for readmission was laughable. A message came through on his private channel. It was from Ambassador Quintara, a Selkathi diplomat who had maintained friendly relations with some human contacts. Vexthar had authorized her to attempt negotiations. "Counselor, I've just returned from meeting with Ambassador Lisa Grant," Quintara reported. She looked tired. "The humans were courteous and professional. They provided humanitarian aid for the Keltheran crisis. They've agreed to resume limited trade with specific species, but they absolutely refuse to discuss rejoining the Council under any circumstances." "What are their demands?" Vexthar asked. "That's just it," Quintara said. "They aren't making demands. They're simply not interested in the Council anymore. Ambassador Grant told me that humanity has moved on. They're building their own networks, their own alliances. They see the Council as part of their past, not their future." Vexthar felt something close to panic. "Did you explain the benefits of membership? The access to knowledge, the protection of collective security?" Quintara's expression was sympathetic but firm. "Counselor, they don't need those things. Their technology is more advanced than ours in many fields. Their economy is thriving, and they've formed security agreements with 40 species who left the Council or were never part of it. They call it the Federation of Free Worlds." "Impossible," Vexthar muttered. "We've ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Perhaps that's the problem," Quintara said softly. "The humans don't want to be ruled. They want to be partners, and we never gave them that option." In human space, President Claire Bennett held a strategy meeting with her top advisors. The holographic displays showed the current state of the galaxy: Council space in one color, human territory in another, and the growing number of independent systems in a third. "The Council is fragmenting faster than we predicted," her intelligence chief reported. 7 species have formally left. 23 more are negotiating with us about alternative arrangements. The Council's economy is in freefall. "What about the Keltheran situation?" Claire asked. "We've delivered food supplies and medical aid," her humanitarian coordinator answered. "Dr. Helen Carter has returned to Kelther with a team of volunteers. They're working to stabilize the agricultural systems. It'll take months, but the immediate famine has been averted." Claire nodded. The Keltherans had been friends to humanity during the Council years. Mirshala had quietly supported human initiatives even when it was politically risky. Helping them now was both moral and strategic. "What's our position if the Council requests formal negotiations?" Claire asked. Lisa Grant, now serving as Foreign Minister, answered that question. "We've prepared a proposal for a new galactic framework. Not a hierarchy like the Council, but a true federation of equals. Every species gets one vote, regardless of age or size. Decisions require consensus, not majority rule, and membership is voluntary, with the freedom to leave at any time. Will the Council accept that?" someone asked. 2 years after humanity's departure from the Galactic Council, the galaxy faced its greatest challenge in recorded history. They called them the Devourers, and they came from beyond the edge of known space like a plague of locusts made of metal and malice. The first warning came from a remote mining colony on the outer rim. The distress signal was brief and terrifying. "They're eating everything. The machines are consuming the planet itself. Please, someone help us. Then silence. When Council scouts arrived 3 days later, they found nothing but a barren rock. The planet's atmosphere was gone. The oceans had been stripped away. Every structure, every resource, every trace of the billion colonists who lived there had vanished. All that remained were massive scars in the planet's crust where the devourers had extracted every useful mineral. Admiral Sophie Turner stood on the bridge of the human flagship Endeavour, reviewing the intelligence reports that Council sources had shared with the Federation. The data was fragmentary but terrifying. The devourers appeared to be a form of machine intelligence, possibly artificial but showing signs of evolution and adaptation. They traveled in vast swarms, converting matter into more of themselves, and they were heading toward inhabited space at an alarming rate. How long before they reach Council core worlds? Sophie asked her tactical officer. At their current speed, 6 weeks. Maybe less if they continue to accelerate, Sophie frowned. The Council had sent desperate messages to humanity, asking for any information or advice. The new Council leadership under Mirshala had been reaching out regularly, trying to build bridges. But this was different. This was an existential threat. Send a message to President Bennett, Sophie ordered. Recommend immediate joint defense discussions. This thing is big enough to threaten everyone, including us. On Earth, President Claire Bennett convened an emergency session with her top military and civilian advisors. The holographic display showed the devourers' projected path. It would take them through Council space first, but if they weren't stopped, they would eventually reach human territory. We could sit back and let the Council deal with it, suggested one advisor. Not our problem anymore. Except it will become our problem, General Marcus Stone countered. These things consume entire planets. Even if the Council somehow stops them, the destruction would be catastrophic. The refugee crisis alone would destabilize the entire region. Ambassador Lisa Grant, now Foreign Minister, leaned forward. There's also the moral question. We have the capability to help. People are going to die, millions or billions of them. Can we live with ourselves if we stand by and do nothing? Claire was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she spoke with conviction. We didn't leave the Council because we wanted to abandon the galaxy. We left because we refused to be treated as second-class citizens. But that doesn't mean we've forgotten our values. Humanity helps those in need. It's who we are. She turned to General Stone. Mobilize the First Fleet. Send Admiral Turner with full authority to coordinate with Council forces. And open up our military research databases, the classified ones. Share everything that might help fight these things. Everything, Madam President, Stone asked, surprised. Everything, Claire confirmed. If we lose this fight, keeping secrets won't matter anyway. The Council chamber on Axis Prime had never been so crowded. Every species sent representatives, even those who had left the official Council structure. The crisis had united them in fear. Councillor Mirshala stood at the central podium, looking out at the assembled delegates. She had lost weight over the past 2 years, the stress of leadership showing clearly, but her voice was strong and determined. The humans have agreed to help, she announced, and the chamber erupted in a mixture of relief and surprised murmuring. Admiral Sophie Turner is en route with the human First Fleet. They're bringing technology and tactical expertise that may give us a chance. At what cost? Asked a skeptical Draxian delegate. Vexthar was gone from power, but his supporters remained. What do the humans want in return? Mirashala's answer was simple and humbling. Nothing. They asked for nothing except the right to coordinate military strategy directly. They're helping because it's the right thing to do. The chamber fell silent. The implications were clear to everyone. The Council had cast humanity out, insulted them, dismissed them as children playing at civilization, and now when the Council faced annihilation, humanity was coming to help anyway. The first battle with the Devourers happened at the Vexus system, a Council mining world with a population of 40 million. The Council fleet had assembled there, 700 ships from 24 species. It was an impressive force, representing centuries of military tradition and experience. It wasn't enough. Admiral Korvash commanded the Council forces, seeking redemption after the humiliation at the human border. He watched through his view screen as the Devourers emerged from faster-than-light travel. There were thousands of them, ranging from small drones the size of shuttles to massive city-sized constructs. They moved with eerie coordination like a school of fish or a flock of birds, All ships engage, Korvash ordered. The Council fleet opened fire with everything they had: energy weapons, kinetic projectiles, missiles, and exotic radiation beams. The space between the fleets lit up with destructive fury. Many devourer units were destroyed, breaking apart into clouds of debris. But for every one destroyed, 3 more seemed to take its place. And worse, the devourers were adapting. The second wave showed resistance to the energy weapons that had destroyed the first wave. The third wave had developed countermeasures against the missiles. "They're learning," Korvash's tactical officer reported with horror in his voice. "They're analyzing our weapons in real time and adapting their defenses." The Council fleet fought bravely, but they were outmatched. Ships began to fall, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers or torn apart by devourer weapons that seemed to disintegrate matter itself. The retreat order came after 2 hours of desperate fighting. They had lost 140 ships and failed to stop the devourer. Advanced. Admiral Sophie Turner arrived at the fallback position 3 days later with the human First Fleet. Her force consisted of only 90 ships, much smaller than the Council fleet. But the Council commanders who saw those ships understood immediately why the humans had been so confident at their border. The human vessels were sleek and deadly, designed with principles that seemed to defy conventional understanding. Their shields shimmered with strange energy patterns. Their hulls were covered in what looked like adaptive armor, and they moved through space with precision and grace that spoke of superior propulsion systems. Sophie met with Korvash and the other Council commanders via holographic conference. She projected a calm confidence that helped steady their nerves. "I've reviewed the tactical data from your engagement," Sophie said without preamble. "The Devourer's adaptive capability is impressive, but it's not unlimited. They need time to analyze and respond. The key is to overwhelm them with variety and speed." "We threw everything we had at them," Korvash protested. "They adapted to it all." "You threw standard weapons at them in predictable patterns," Sophie said, not unkindly. "No offense, but Council military doctrine hasn't changed much in centuries. You're fighting a conventional war against an unconventional enemy." She pulled up a tactical display. "Here's what we're going to do. The human fleet will engage first with weapons the Devourers haven't seen before. While they're adapting to that, Council forces will hit them from multiple angles with coordinated strikes. We keep changing tactics, keep them off balance, and we use this." She highlighted a section of space near the Devourer's projected path. "There's an unstable star system here. We're going to lead them into it and trigger a stellar event that will destroy or scatter their main force." "That's incredibly risky," another Council admiral objected. "We'd have to get close enough to the star to risk our own ships." "Yes," Sophie agreed, "which is why the human ships will serve as bait. Our shields can handle the radiation better than yours. We'll draw them in while you set up the kill zone." It was a desperate plan, but it was better than anything the Council had come up with. They agreed to try it. The second battle took place a week later. Sophie's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, directly in the path of the Devourer swarm. The machines immediately changed course to intercept, sensing valuable prey. "All ships weapons-free," Sophie ordered calmly. "Show them what humanity's been working on." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that defied conventional understanding. Quantum disruption beams that made Devourer units simply cease to exist. Gravitational lances that crushed multiple targets with focused spatial distortion. Swarm missiles that moved with intelligence, actively hunting their targets and coordinating with each other. The Devourers had never encountered such weapons before. Their adaptation protocols struggled to respond. In the first 10 minutes, human fire destroyed over 1,000 Devourer units with minimal losses. But then the adaptation began. Sophie watched her tactical display as the Devourers started to adjust their shields and behaviors. "Right on schedule," she muttered. "All ships begin retreat toward the target star. Council forces stand by." 3 years after humanity's quiet departure from the Galactic Council, the galaxy looked completely different. The war with the Devourers was over, won through cooperation and sacrifice. The victory had come at a cost: 37 human ships lost, 190 Council vessels destroyed, and billions of lives saved by the combined effort. But more importantly, it had taught the galaxy a lesson that could never be unlearned. President Clare. Bennett stood before the assembled representatives of 73 species in what had once been the Council chamber on Axis Prime. The room had been redesigned, Gone were the elevated platforms that placed elder species above younger ones. Now all the representatives sat in a circular arrangement, each position exactly equal to every other. The symbolism was deliberate and profound. "We gather here today not as rulers and subjects," Claire began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "Not as elder and younger, superior and inferior. We gather as equals, as partners, as friends who have bled together and survived together. We gather to build something new." The chamber was silent, every eye fixed on the human president. 3 years ago, many in this room would have dismissed her words as the naive idealism of a young species. Now they listened with respect and hope. "The old Galactic Council served its purpose for 10,000 years," Claire continued. "It maintained peace and facilitated cooperation, but it was built on hierarchy, on the assumption that age equals wisdom and tradition equals righteousness. We now know that assumption was flawed." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Humanity proposes a new framework. We call it the Federation of Free Worlds. Every member species has one vote, regardless of age, size, or technological advancement. Decisions require consensus building, not simple majority rule. And most importantly, membership is voluntary. Any species can join, and any species can leave without penalty or prejudice." A murmur ran through the chamber. Councillor Mirshala rose from her seat, her aquatic features showing determination. She had lost her title when the old council dissolved, but she had gained something more valuable, the genuine respect of her peers. "I speak for the Keltharan people," Mirshala said. "We were saved from famine by human generosity when they owed us nothing. We were saved from the devourers by human courage when we had rejected them. If humanity is willing to share leadership of this new federation, the Keltharans will join without hesitation." One by one, other representatives stood to voice their support. The Centaurians, who had seen human military prowess firsthand. The Thexlar, whose trade networks had been rebuilt with human help. The Selkathi, who had maintained friendship with humanity even during the dark times. Even some Draxians stood, breaking from their old leadership's legacy. Not everyone agreed immediately. Some elder species were reluctant to give up their privileged positions. Some were suspicious of human motives, wondering if this was a subtle play for dominance. But the tide of opinion was clear. The galaxy wanted change. The Federation Charter was signed over the course of 3 days. It was a remarkable document, combining the best traditions of council governance with new principles of equality and freedom. The signing ceremony was broadcast across hundreds of worlds, watched by trillions of beings. When it was finished, Captain Jake Morrison stood in the observation deck of the Horizon's Edge, the same ship that had carried humanity away from the Council 3 years ago. Beside him, Ambassador Lisa Grant looked out at the assembled fleet, ships from dozens of species floating together in peaceful formation. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" Jake asked quietly. Lisa smiled. "I hoped we would. But hope and certainty are different things. When we left, I wasn't sure what would happen. I just knew we couldn't stay and be diminished. The Council thought we needed them," Jake mused. "They thought we'd come crawling back." "They weren't entirely wrong," Lisa said thoughtfully. "We did need connection with other species. We did need trade and cultural exchange and partnership. We just didn't need subordination. There's a difference between cooperation and submission." The transition from old council to new federation wasn't entirely smooth. There were disputes about which species would host the new Federation headquarters. There were arguments about military command structure and trade regulations. There were 1,000 small conflicts that arose whenever institutions change, but there was also genuine goodwill and a shared commitment to making the new system work. Species that had barely spoken to each other under the old council were now negotiating directly, finding common ground without needing elder races to mediate. One of the most symbolic moments came when former Councillor Vexthar requested a private meeting with President Bennett. The Draxian had lost all his political power when his government fell. Many expected him to retreat into bitter exile. Instead, he had spent the past year in quiet contemplation. They met in a small conference room on Axis Prime, just the two of them. Vexthar looked older, his scales duller, but there was something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility, perhaps, or wisdom earned through failure. "President Bennett, I've come to apologize," Vexthar said without preamble. "Not on behalf of the Council or my people, though they should apologize too. I speak only for myself. I was wrong about humanity. I was wrong about what leadership means. And my arrogance cost lives. Claire studied him for a moment. She could have been cold, could have made him suffer for his past actions. Instead, she gestured to a chair. Sit down, Vexthar. Let's talk about the future instead of the past. They spoke for 2 hours. Vexthar explained the fear that had driven his decisions, the terror that younger species would surpass and replace the elder races. Claire listened without judgment, then shared humanity's own fears during those dark days after the ultimatum. We didn't know if we could survive alone, she admitted. We had become integrated into galactic civilization. Leaving was a risk, but staying and accepting subordination would have destroyed something essential in the human spirit. We would rather fail on our own terms than succeed as someone else's subjects. And you didn't fail, Vexthar said quietly. You thrived. While we were collapsing, you were building. While we were mourning our lost glory, you were creating the future. I understand now why the galaxy follows you. Not because you're stronger, though you are, but because you give people hope and dignity. The conversation ended with something unexpected, a genuine friendship beginning to form. Vexthar became an advisor to the new Federation, using his experience to help navigate complex interspecies relations. His redemption arc became a symbol of the new order, proof that anyone could change and grow. On Earth, the changes were equally profound. The planet had become a nexus of galactic culture, a meeting place where hundreds of species mingled freely. Human cities hosted alien students studying at Earth universities. Human restaurants served cuisine from dozens of worlds. Human children grew up with alien friends and classmates, learning that diversity was strength. Dr. Helen Carter returned to her work at what was now called the Federation Medical Institute, a facility that combined human innovation with the knowledge of dozens of species. The treatments they developed saved lives across the galaxy. Medical care that had once been the privilege of wealthy core worlds was now available to frontier colonies and developing civilizations. Admiral Sophie Turner took command of the Federation Defense Force, a voluntary military alliance that protected all member worlds. The force combined the best warriors from multiple species, trained in both traditional combat and the innovative tactics humanity had pioneered. It was smaller than the old Council fleet, but far more effective. General Marcus Stone oversaw the integration of human military technology into the broader Federation arsenal. Humanity shared freely, holding back only the most sensitive research until they were certain it wouldn't be misused. The generosity shocked many elder species who were accustomed to hoarding knowledge, but perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The new Federation explicitly rejected the idea that any species was inherently superior to another. Age didn't grant authority. Tradition didn't justify injustice. Every civilization, from the eldest to the newest, had valuable contributions to make. This principle was tested when a new species, the Lorians, made first contact with the Federation. They were at an earlier stage of development, having only recently achieved faster-than-light travel. Under the old Council system, they would have been designated as a client species, subject to strict oversight and limited autonomy for centuries. Instead, Captain Jake Morrison, commanding the exploration vessel Unity, welcomed them as equals. He offered technology and knowledge freely, without demanding submission or tribute. He explained the Federation principles and invited the Lorians to join when they felt ready. The Lorian ambassador, a being named Zalthor, asked the question that everyone in the galaxy had been wondering. Why do you treat us this way? We have nothing to offer you. Our technology is primitive compared to yours. Our knowledge is limited. Why not simply rule us as the old Council would have done? Jake's answer was simple and profound. Because you're people, not resources. Because freedom is more valuable than control. Because the